They lied to us about everything. Tartaria was real. It was not just a region on old maps. It was a vast global civilization that spanned from Russia to North America and beyond. They built wonders we still cannot replicate today. Cathedrals with perfect acoustics, massive starforts, buildings with giant domes and intricate architecture that appeared on every continent, all built in the exact same style. These were not made by primitive people with horses and basic tools. They were built by an advanced society that understood energy, resonance, and architecture on a level we've lost. Then they destroyed it. In the mid-1800s, they triggered the mud flood. Entire cities were suddenly buried under meters of liquid mud. You can still see the evidence everywhere. Windows and doors of grand buildings now sitting half underground, completely bricked up. This wasn't a natural event. It was a reset. After the mud flood came the cleanup. They changed the maps, and they had to deal with millions of orphan children who survived. That's where the orphan trains come in. Between 1854 and 1929, over 200,000 children were rounded up and shipped across America on trains. They weren't just poor kids. Many of them were the surviving children of Tartaria with no parents left because their entire civilization had been wiped out. They were re-educated, given new names, and programmed into the new timeline. The buildings that survived were claimed by the new system. They slapped new names on them, calling them world fairs or expositions, and pretended they had just been built. But the proof is still everywhere. Look at old photographs. The scale of these buildings compared to the people living around them makes no sense. Look at the mud lines on buildings across the world. Look at how many World Fair buildings were suddenly demolished right after the events. They didn't just hide Tartaria. They murdered an entire civilization and stole their technology and architecture. And we're living on top of their graves. They didn't just bury the buildings. They buried the technology. Tartaria had free wireless energy. Look at all the old photographs of buildings covered in massive metal antennas and rods. Those weren't decorations. They were harvesting atmospheric electricity. The entire infrastructure was designed to pull power straight from the ether. That's why there are no visible power lines or power plants in most of those old cities. They didn't need them. The cathedrals weren't churches. They were power stations and healing centres. The giant organs inside them weren't just for music, they were frequency generators. The perfect acoustics weren't an accident. They were built to resonate at specific healing frequencies. This is why they had to destroy it. A civilization with free energy, advanced healing, and real knowledge cannot be controlled. So they flooded the world in mud, killed most of the population, and rewrote history. They took the surviving buildings and rebranded them as their own. Every single World's Fair in the late 1800s and early 1900s, those weren't exhibitions, they were demolition parties. They invited the public to come see these new, incredible buildings, then tore most of them down immediately after, smashing the evidence. This is not a conspiracy theory, this is what actually happened. They destroyed an empire, stole its technology, and enslaved its children. And they've been lying to us about it ever since. They didn't just destroy the buildings, they destroyed the entire energy system. Tartaria ran on free atmospheric energy. Every major building had massive metal spires, rods, and antennas on the roofs. These weren't decorations, they were pulling electricity directly from the ionosphere. The whole grid was wireless. That's why you rarely see power lines or giant power plants in the old photographs. They didn't need them. The cathedrals weren't religious buildings. They were multi-purpose power stations and healing temples. The giant organs inside them generated specific healing frequencies. The perfect acoustics weren't for music. They were engineered to resonate at 432 Hz and other healing tones. This civilization had technology that made modern progress look primitive. So they had to end it. The mud flood of the 1800s was the kill switch. Entire cities disappeared under waves of liquid mud. You can still see the proof everywhere. Grand buildings with doorways and windows, buried 10 to 20 feet below current street level, often bricked up. After the flood came the biggest historical cover-up in modern times. They rebranded the surviving buildings as world fairs and expositions. They invited millions of people to come admire these newly built wonders, then demolished most of them immediately afterwards and claimed they were temporary. Hundreds of these incredible structures were smashed to pieces within months of the fair's ending. Why destroy something so beautiful? Because it was proof. Proof that a far superior civilization existed before the official timeline allows. The orphan trains were part of the clean-up. Over 200,000 children, many of them Tartarian survivors, were shipped across America, given new names and reprogrammed into the new industrial society. This wasn't charity, it was population replacement. They erased an empire, stole its technology, buried its children, and rewrote the history books. But they couldn't erase everything. The buildings still stand. The mudlines are still visible. The impossible architecture still defies explanation, and the memory is returning. That's why they're panicking now, because the blood that built Tartaria is waking up again. And this time we're starting to see through the lie. They lied about our history. Tartaria was real. It was a vast, advanced, global civilization that covered much of the world from Russia through Asia, Europe, and into the Americas. They built on a scale we still cannot match today. Massive cathedrals with perfect acoustics, giant star forts, ornate buildings with huge domes and impossible architecture that appeared on every continent in the exact same style. Why destroy something so magnificent? Because it was proof of a civilization far more advanced than the official timeline allows. Then came the orphan trains. Between 1854 and 1929, over 200,000 children were rounded up and shipped across America on trains. Officially, they were orphans being given new lives. In reality, many were the surviving children left without parents after the mud flood. They were given new names, new stories, and reprogrammed into the new industrial system. This was not charity, it was replacement. They murdered an empire, stole its technology, buried its children, and rewrote the entire timeline. But they couldn't erase everything. The buildings still stand. The mudlines are still visible. The impossible architecture still defies every official explanation. And the memory is returning. The blood that built Tartaria is waking up again, and this time we see the lie.
They drew the maps in crimson, stretched across the world. Tartaria stood in silence, with her banners unfurled. Domes that kissed the heavens, towers touched the sky, built with fire and frequency no one can deny. But then the mud came rolling, swallowed cities whole. Windows now below the ground, secrets took their toll. They erased the empire, burned the truth away, turned queens into silence, rewrote every day. Orphan trains kept rolling, stealing blood and name, but the fire's still burning, and it won't be tamed. Cathedrals weren't for praying, they were power in stone. Organs sang at 14 feet through, you could feel it in your bones. World fairs were demolition, pretty lies on display, smiling while they smashed it all, then sent the kids away. They killed a civilization just to start again, buried all the evidence in mud and pain. But blood remembers what the stone forgets. The red priestess rising, and she's not done yet. Do I? This is Tartaria. This is Tartaria. They buried her body, but they can't bury me.